have a rant about space and things. I suppose asking the question about stuff being outside or in perspective is already confusing, because how would anybody know this, right? How would anybody, like, I can very well identify my own confusion with the perspective stuff, but in general, at least in my contemplation, and I have to admit I've not read any books about perspective and things, so it's all basically a very odd kind of analysis, right? Like, I remember being somewhat young and just looking at comic books, and they were like super awesome, and you could see Spider-Man, and they had these awesome 3-point perspectives, like in every kind of panel. So eventually, I started analyzing the single plane, right? So on the kind of comic books that I had, you could see like the skyscraper, and there was like all these windows, and this goes down a lot. There was all these building things, right? So there was like, I can't draw Spider-Man, right? So I can't, but he was like leaping on the thing, and you could see his fingers being all big and his legs being all small because perspective and distortion and this kind of stuff, right? We all know this, and we can basically Google and look at all these awesomenesses, things and drawings from people that are very good at drawing. So I was very young and I had no idea how this works. So eventually, it led me to the plane, right? So how does the perspective get in the plane? And even back in the days, I had no idea of how to separate perspective and distortion. So distortion, for me, in my brain, in my logic, right, it's always in relation to where's me, who is me, right? This is me, and what really matters is the space in front of me. Is all that matters, right? So even when I draw, like, anything, right, there's always me, and there's always a space, because where is the object? Like, is it right in front of me? Is it to my left? Is it to my right? Is it up or down? And this is basically, I have to answer these questions because I am the artist. So basically, if I have, it's like, it's actually exhausting drawing this weird looking flower. So I'm drawing the flower straight on, right? It's basically completely flat, straight, and upright, and standing fine. There's no real kind of implying it's supposed to be 3D, because it isn't. It's a two-dimensional drawing, and that's all there really is, right? So in my brain, it makes sense to reinforce, basically help my brain identify that this is a 2D drawing, but it does indeed exist in a 3D space. So I draw a square, and the square itself contains perspective as it contains distortion, because I see the plane, right? I see this, right? It's not just a line, right? But it has depth, right? Depth, like from point A to point B. Point B being further away from me as the viewer, and again, I can draw myself basically looking at this thing, right? If I go up, back to me and my space. Oh dear, my space. Space dear. Space, okay. So in logical conclusion, right? I see the box and I can pretend it's the top, because this is the side and this is the front. Logic, right? So I can conclude and deduct that the box of the plane is indeed below my eyesight, because I can see point B and point A and the line between very clearly, right? Point A, point B, there's the line. I see that's right. I see the top. What is okay? This is perspective. The distortion part. This is it's the other side of the magic, right? The plane itself is 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, right? One, 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 right? It's basically, these are twins, as are these, because they have the same angle, right? It's the same, they are parallel. So we have names and terminology for things, right? Horizontal, vertical lines, etc., etc. Deep breath. I gotta take a sip of my tea. There I go. So the distortion is basically what I can observe with my finger, right? If I hold my finger on my eyeball, right? This is my view frame. The finger is like gigantic. This is all finger. I can't see anything. You're gone, right? If I hold my finger above my eye, I can't see anything. If I move my finger away, the finger eventually becomes very small. And if I can do this correctly, there's my thumb, there's finger, 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 there's my wrist, and then yes, it's nice. So this is like stuff has to get smaller, right? So it's big in front, but it's small in the back, right? It's big in front and it's small in the back, right? And this being point A and this being point B, if I connect basically these points, I have a plane in one point perspective, right? And this alone has to sink in for a moment because reasons, right? Usually this is like, oh my god, horizon line, there's a point, and I do this kind of stuff, and then oh look, there's a box, and I can like, I do the same thing, but I don't understand any of this. And again, point A is closer to me as point B is further away. This is a big line, there's a small line, and the line gets smaller as it is traveling away. This is the most important aspect of distortion. It's like something we can observe very easily and satisfyingly at something. So there's my big line, right? And the line gets smaller as it would travel away from me, basically. So there is a square box in perspective, basically 2 point. Otherwise 3 point. This one, the third point, is not visualized, but it is a fact, right? So again, logic. This is point A, this is point B, and point B is further away. So if I go to point C, the line would shrink, right? It is very big, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, smaller, smaller until it is a point. Logic, right? It gets so small, the line is a point, right? And if you believe me, this is a circle. It is really a circle. You can't tell me any different. So the point being is, if I go again to point B and I know point B is further away from me, something has to happen to the line. That is the wrong. It's B. So in this case, the lines, they're very much the same size, but you can see that they do shrink. So what has to happen logically? Logically, if I go further away, it has to be a point, yes? Yes? So let's make it smaller, right? And all I really do is I do this. And I have a plane in 1 point perspective. It's like it's growing naturally, just like the flower, without any kind of, you know, it's, it, I gotta bite my tongue. I have to bite my tongue. Um, it's like I'm shortcutting my, oh dear God. It's like psychologizing myself. But it's like a logical kind of analyzing. And this is what I did, right? So I reverse engineered what I called perspective. And it was again distortion, right? I had no idea how to separate these things. So again, it's about where's the stuff in relation to my me eye level horizon, right? If the thing is below, I see its top. Logic. If the thing is above, I see its bottom, right? Sure, I also see the front, so it's logic, right? So the box in front of me is just this. Like it's a square because it's straight in my face. And what I can't see, so all I can really see is this point and anything in between. I can't really see like the top line or the bottom line. And this is perspective. So the what I would call dynamic behavior of basically geometry. So there is a change. I'm going to copy this. This is the madness. There is a dynamic change, and this is where my 3D modeling programs um, helped a ton to understand this. So moving stuff up and down and further away, closer to you and away and up and down, right? This is the stuff that you have to figure out. So something happens to your geometry if you move it below, if you move it up, right? And still, things are always further away than other things, right? You always have depth. You always, when you have the space, you have the depth. And this is where I think in 2D space, but I extend my 2D space by a 3D space. And again, this, like the real characteristic is that this is small and this is bigger, because it implies the distortion gradually going into the depth of the space. And if, like it's so logical, again, like the line would shrink and shrink and shrink as it goes away until it is a point, and there's my vanishing point. But I don't draw this first, and this is why I hate the books, right? They basically, these are the stepping stones for understanding, right? If you know them, you know them, right? You can basically fly. Otherwise, the books, they go like yoink yoink, and then you have the result. And this is the part that still causes massive amounts of confusion. Like it's insane. It's actually insane. It's not really insane, but um, yeah, it does amuse me because it's funny, and I have done so much practice. I basically gone insane and back again, and so again. So looking at this logically, it's very simple to understand, right? Because where is the object in relation to you? And then it begins, what sort of object do you have? Because usually we don't have a plane, and the plane is not a flower, right? But again, I can draw the stuff and still make it look like it is existing in some kind of 3D space, but just helping the brain identify there is something else, right? And I can continue this and say there is a upspace, right? So I see the bottom plane. I don't have to do this, right? I can just imply I don't see the bottom plane, but I see this top. And then I can basically go up in space. Me myself is still stationary on the ground, right? But I pretend that basically the space, um, it's so weird. So it can go linear, but it can also be dynamic and basically distort, and that is a choice that I make. So if I go really up in space, I have to go further away from me. That means the next box has to be smaller, and I should see the bottom plane. So the first step is make the box, make it smaller. It's done, right? It's so done. And then the line, basically the front line, come on, straight line. This is big, this is small, right? But still I have this one being A and this one being B, and I know logically B can't really be the same size as A because it's further away from me. Again, logic, right? So it has to be smaller. And as I do this, right, the sidelines basically come to collapse, right? If I have a very small line, the collapse is very, very swift. And again, if I do this and I connect these things, I have a vanishing point. It's like it's growing, right? Because I'm shooting it into space. And again, I have something small or big in relation to this, and I connect these, and again, I create a vanishing point. In what regard am I a purist? I don't know. Possibly, but I don't know what it would mean. And when it comes to drawing, when it comes to learning, all these things. What is the context? So again, big line, small line, perspective distortion, etc., etc. In creating other, it's wide open to interpretation. It's so wide open to interpretation. Like I can't really replace it, but if I could replace it, I'm more the mad scientist. I'm more the mad scientist than anything else. I'm not really. I wouldn't even be an artist because all I really do is mad science. So part of the dynamic behavior basically is that the line itself has a certain position, right? So the base, this is the baseline, and we have this thing, right? So the thing can basically be up or down, right? It can have basically any position. And this is basically another part of the perspective because as I move this thing up, I would see the top plane, right? If I move it further down enough, it's like it still creates some kind of plane in space. And this is something I would need to identify because within the perspective there is a shift, right? So between me basically having a this eyesight laser, right? The box itself has two planes, and the subsequent logic is basically one line is always further away than the other. So it basically means that if the one line is closer to your eye level horizon, it's more flat than the other one. And this again is only because of the distortion, and it kind of makes no sense to explain this because like I have something big and then I need something small. The position of the small has to be like it has to be in a very specific position for this to work. Because I have something big in front and something big on the top. Therefore, if I go into space, I have to have something small in the back, but also something small at the bottom, right? This is basically where I have one plane, and basically the horizontal and the vertical lines converge, basically independently. This is the beginning of the three-point perspective because um, like to in my sense, right, in my perception and whatever experience it gives me analyzing this stuff, it's fundamentally different from just having a plane in a normal perspective, like in a one point perspective, and you can always basically fake this and just distort one but not the other, right? So usually if I go into space, this one has to be significantly smaller than the other one, and if this is a certain size, the other one has to be a certain like a certain percentage bigger just to fit into again the illusion of three-point perspective space. Like from basically this point is the closest to me as the observer. If I go away, it has to go smaller. So this is my base. The line goes smaller. The point can't really shrink, but this line has a twin and it has to shrink. So this one basically continues, and there's another box. And if I continue this some more, it has to basically shrink until it hits and meets the vanishing point, right? So if I continue these lines, they eventually converge and form another vanishing point. I'm a potato. I'm weird. That's it's a summary of the ages. So from experience, right, I know where's my level horizon to basically draw the line out correctly. Otherwise, it's still a guess, right? Depending on things. If I'm more on the ground, the building goes up, right? This is basically the skyscraper where the lines converge. So is it long? Is it short? If I have a long skyscraper, it still has to do its thing, right? So big in front, small in the back, smaller in the back. And if this again goes, further away into space, it has to go smaller. I need a drink before I answer this question. As a beginner, it's kind of in your nature to skip things, because as the beginner, it's very hard to say what you even need to learn to, figure things out, succeed, or just figure things out. So as for using these kind of tools, um, and they're kind of crutches, right? They are walking aids. How do you call these eight wheels? These um, driving wheels for kids on the bikes. How do you call those? Training wheels. So it's fine. It's fine to use that stuff, and you can't really blame anybody for just not learning more. That is kind of the summary that defeats the kind of, like, you can't really argue. There's like, who are you to tell anybody else in this? It's the same for me, right? Who am I to tell anybody else that should not and shouldn't? And so still, in my opinion, and at least for my perception, I value my creative freedom and creative ability. So anything and everything I do has to come out of my brain, and I can't use any sort of tools. And yet I use digital arts, and I don't rely on um, not being able to erase, right? So like traditional media is very permanent, and so I still could erase, but I don't. Yet I use these tools, right? I erase, and it's still a crutch, right? If you contemplate like being super precise, like 100% super accurate, and every stroke, every line has to be where it's supposed to be, and even if it's wrong, you are the Michelangelo or savant artist, whatever. And it's fine because it's art. That is a valid excuse that everybody can ever do it, right? Like, who are you to tell me this is bad art, right? If I just draw a stickman like this, like, I don't need to go to school to do this. I don't need a degree. I can sell this, right, for $1 million. So the extension for the stabilizer tools and stuff like this is fine. Um, like, I'm looking at tools that help you with perspective grids, right? Specifically for analyzing space and depth, or just basically, um, the artists, they want to make art, right? They don't want to go insane for learning, right? And this again is where my approach matters to me, because I value my creative freedom and basically being able to do it without the tool. What's up, Leo? Goodbye, Leo. Don't go mad. Excuse me. So, like, we value these things differently, right? People don't mind using these tools because they want to finish their artwork. And there's a lot of blood and sweat in these artworks, so you want to get there as fast as you can, right? For my goal, there's no tool, because you know um like, the point being, again, is the creative freedom, like being able to do it without the tools and without basically drawing perspective grids and this kind of stuff, right? And it can be so simple, and I enjoy just drawing boxes, because it's not about the box, right? It's about the space. And this again is something I value. Excuse me. Speak more so I don't stuff up my throat. It's insane. But understanding this is where I like this. I love this. Right? Imagine having to use a calculator or a keyboard because you can't do handwriting. And I have dyslexia, but it is the same thing. Imagine you couldn't speak. Like, it limits your freedom. If you value your freedom, you will die for this, right? You will do anything and everything. to protect your freedom. And I feel my discipline, right, regarding all these hours that I would still do to just be able to do it from my mind, because it is a wonderful kind of thing to just not rely on anything, right? And basically, like when it comes to art, it is a very, very wonderful thing, because you basically can focus. This is a good point. You can focus on creation, right? You can focus on what you want and what you want to do without considering pressing some buttons in some kind of program to stabilize your brushstrokes or to figure out, is your perspective grid set up correctly? Like, oh, I'm vomiting inside. I'm screaming inside, because this is like, if I have an idea, right? It is very much like the river. It wants to flow. Like it wants to get out. Like, and we all look for this kind of skill to just breathe it, right? To just it shouldn't stop, right? It's so weird, and I like spirals. But anyway, what we don't like is basically, a performance that is like this, and it's still art, but it's different from basically playing the piano and you know how to do it, and you don't think about which buttons to press. And this is where the harmony comes in, the melody and all the good stuff of the music, because it just flows out of your brain. And like the boxes part is like the single square box, yeah, is such a tiny thing, and you would consider it to be like a very, very minuscule, tiny importance. But instead of just having a minimum amount of importance, it is the biggest amount of importance that you can control. It's insane. It's actually insane, right? Like, understanding the box, right? And this is a far stretch. I say the box, right? From the entire concept of what the box can do and tell you. This is me telling you to draw boxes. And everything else is basically leaving you open to interpretation and basically failure, right? In my let's say, in my 10 years of study and practice and basically going insane twice over, right? I dissected this long enough. So this is me telling you to practice boxes, because if done correctly and if done right and blah 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 blah, you will basically go insane and understand that, like, it's so weird. It's so weird. It's like the syntax and punctuation in language, and I suck at both, right? But when you're actually able to um, connect these strings and bits and pieces of information together, is all there is, right? Language is connecting bits and pieces of information, and this is basically language. I connect bits and pieces, and this is random, right? It's completely random. If I do this right, you will understand what I'm doing, right? But only if the information is connected in the right ways, in the right fashion, in the right blah 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 blah, it makes sense, right? And this is language, bits and pieces of information that you usually don't really pay attention to, right? This one, 0.0000000, it doesn't even exist percent. So let's go back to the box. This is a word, and it conveys meaning. And we are so far digressing from the original question about weird looking to it. So again, we have bits and pieces of information. And these bits and pieces, they convey the illusion of 3D space and depth and perspective, right? And these are the building blocks. So again, the building blocks connected in the right way form the illusion. Usually nobody would think about it this way. What I'm saying is basically learning the skill of drawing is understanding how to connect weird looking bits and pieces in the right way, right? So that they eventually form, right? This is actually, it's so stupid. It's so stupid, but it makes so much sense, right? You know what I'm doing. You know what I'm doing, right? Look at this flower. It's magnificent. It's magnificent. So managing four elements. These are my four elements. In terms of, then again, it is very weird to figure out, like, how does the space and the perspective get in a box when the shape itself is so skewed that it is not a square anymore, but it has 4 points. It's the same 4 points. I have to be able to identify how does it sit in space. And even though this thing itself is not a box because it is more like a wedge or a ramp, and there still is a square relating to these things. And I went from triangles, basically boxes, and it was all about the square. To then again, suddenly I had to use triangles because it was the only logical choice to create um, more specific bits and pieces of information, because like the elements that I had were insufficient. Basically, the way I arranged the things to create my bits and pieces of information were insufficient or not thought out enough. So I had to go with the triangle, and then usually a square is two triangles, fine. And then again, eventually the square becomes three triangles, right? It's like completely insane, and eventually there again is a three-dimensional structure. It's weirdly emerging from this, right? And still, on top of this, there's more kind of stuff, interpretation to build the forms. But this is the weird kind of gist, right? Language, in terms of conveying information. And we learn language, or basically we do this in preschool, and as a baby, we write letters a million times so we understand how to do these things. Now, when it comes to perspective, again, this is the book telling you how perspective works, but it doesn't really look at this. Like the real purest, raw, most fundamental, like you can't really go any further, right? Like when, let's say, I can't really look any further because when I draw, this is what comes out of my pencil. It's a line. I call it a line. I can turn it into an arrow, and it is a graphic element that can be considered a line. It's a string, something, right? So this is all I have to basically, again, understand how to connect this element in multiple ways to create 3D space, depth, weirdness, stuff, things, flowers, box, lots of boxes. I suppose if I now go back, right, understanding this gives me a certain amount of creative freedom where I can basically do anything I want within a certain limitation of how much I understand, right? This is the beginner, or basically it doesn't even fill a square, but this is the beginner. The more you understand, the more you can do. If all you understand is basically your tools and the buttons that you press, you can't really call it an addiction, because like it doesn't really matter, because like the goal being making art ultimately, like the artist, the individual has to express himself. How they get there, it doesn't matter. How you fill the bar of your skill and your potential doesn't matter. You can use the tools, you can use teachers, you can use books, you can use the bad advice, you can use the good advice, as long as you get there. This is the most important thing, as far as I know. Then again, if we dissect this stuff again, um, we all have the different values. Like, do I want to, like, to put it simply, I wanted to draw from imagination. Like my ego demands it. I want it so bad, and I don't want to rely on reference. I have to rely on reference to learn, to basically fill the bar, right? To fill the bar, to understand how does a face look, how does anatomy look, right? And there's many bars. And I like faces. I like the human body. I like the boobas. I like the legs. I like the butts and all these forms. And they all require analysis. They require study. And again, all I really have is the line. And the line connected in the right way, in the right fashion, in whatever mumbo jumbo. And this, it's complete madness. But if it works, right? If you can make it work, and this again is the science. And I value this over anything else. Like I'd rather spend the next 20 years not making art. This it's so weird. It's so weird. No, it's not. It's not. It's not just ego. No, 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 no. So there is a. If you go back into to further back, something is beyond ego, and it is a this thing needs the ego basically as a carrier. It is a requirement because so the ego itself is not the pinnacle. It's not the apex. There's something above. And it's not the soul, you know, it's something more intangible, tangible, right? If we can say we have an ego, we also have a self. And the self wants to express itself through art, through science, through stuff, through me drawing weird things. So my ego just wants. But so the will and the desire becomes more focused. And usually we want specific things for our own sake, right? And usually we don't really ask ourselves, is it my ego or is it myself? Like, right, the spiritual self. So my ego wants the skill. It just wants it for the sake of having it. But the purpose is that the self can express itself. And this is like the self-expression. This is the magic, the self-expression. The self has to basically motivate your ego to be in pursuit of this. And these two, ego and self, in basically, you know this, right? Everybody knows this. It is the yin and yang. You can't really have the one without the other. And we have both. They're ultimately, we are not really in conflict. We should be in harmony, and usually it is kind of between both, but this is how I see it. And it is not ego. Not just, I mean, I know how my desire was, right? And this is me basically drawing for 9+ months, 16 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours a day. I know why I do this, right? It's not just ego just for the sake of having it. Like, it is not a greedy pursuit of skill for the sake of being skillful. And so overall, this it should give you some food for thought as far as how do you align yourself, right? Is it just ego? And I have my highest doubts, because the ego itself would not want or desire to be creative. The ego itself does not desire this. Like the ego, this is like within the ego itself, there is no thing that creates the desire to basically not take in. And wanting is what the ego does, right? Wanting is wanting to take in, to absorb, to get, to receive, to have, to possess, to own, all the words, right? Creativity and basically the desire to self-express cannot come from this thing. Like, it is a impossibility. No, like there's no science that can really analyze this. There's psychology, um, and if you look into when the word ego was found, or when humanity actually found this thing, how far back it goes, and it goes far beyond any attempts of psychology. But I would have a 99 very absolute faith and no doubts that people that people that want to be creative or people that are creative don't do it for ego alone. It can't work. Even like the source of creativity itself is not ego. It can't be. It can't be. It can't be. No. This is it's like don't destroy my reality. This is what it feels like. Don't destroy my reality. And I mean, I do contemplate a lot of things when it comes to stuff, including philosophy and ego, wanting, and you know, basically observing myself existing, and then analyzing myself and all these bits and pieces. Any questions? Any questions? Draw boxes. Boxes, good practice. Box, good. Yes. Draw lines. Anyway, this is like the summary of the skill, right? Like basically you take bits and pieces of information and you rearrange them. This is all I really do and all I really did, right? Any questions? I go drink my tea. 10 seconds. I'm see I'm very conflicted. I have to earn money just because there's no piece in my brain that says you can be lazy, right? So there is a strong desire to um, be somewhat financially secure. I'm terrible at this. I suffer from depression, which basically fucks up every attempt, basically many and most attempts of having any sort of career, making money over a longer period of time. Um, so when I read what you said, Lynch, the key words for me, right, is create good art. That is the key. That is the key, right? For the one part, good art means you can make money. Good art means it is what you want to do, so it is a self-fulfillment, and that means it is your happiness. You can still make good art that doesn't really sell, right? In terms of me drawing stuff like this, right? Contemplating the science to understand this kind of weird diagram that has no real purpose for anybody else but myself. I like doing it because, again, my ego wants it, my brain wants it, myself wants it to just do it once and then see where existence gets you. There's a part that can't be monetized. There's a part that I can't sell. And still, I know this part and I value this part. And the key point for myself, for basically being happy with working long hours, is the ability to make good art. And that is a relative good. It has to be good to my own standards, to my own degree. And I believe it is the same to you. So people could tell you you make good stuff, and you would still not be happy. That is the key. Where again the skill or the contemplation of basically what are you got to do, what are you got to learn to make the artworks that you really want to make. That is it can take time. Like it's not something that grows on trees and it doesn't just come flying into your brain. you know. And me figuring out um, how I want to design and shape the visual experience that I call my art. Right? I want to. It's like I treat it as a symphony. more than I treat it like artworks. It is a more specific kind of thing, and I'm okay with having spent 10 years of basically at least 4 years of pure failure, you know? And there was a rough time, depression and anxiety and that kind of stuff, and not really making money, and still the ego wanting things that it couldn't have. So there's that conflict always exists, and still the desire to just learn more, and it is a driving force that is uh, fueled by insanity, right? Like the limitations of I can't draw a brain, but basically my brain motivating or myself motivating my ego to learn more, 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 more. Like all I can really do is observe and be the participant. I don't want to stop because I want to make good stuff continuously, continuously. So the real thing when it comes to making good art, and when that is a strong desire, there is a discipline required. And it is the discipline where I suppose well, my brain asks myself the question, should I really say it? Right now I gotta say it. The discipline to just sit down and not stop. There's there's a short stop for sleep and social activities and other activities and stuff activities, but like 90% of what I call life or free time, having time, wanting to do stuff is converted for making art or learning or practice. That at least what it was, right? Back in the days when I was young. The desire, and the wanting to get good, to be good, to get better, to be happy, to find fulfillment, to not be sucking at drawing, to not be complete trash, was absolute. Like to some degree, yeah, sure. It kind of wrecked myself because I wasn't really careful. So I didn't really balance my life. Right? It was 90% art. It was no video games. I didn't really have friends because depression kind of hacked that over. So I was okay being alone for way too long, for way too long. But still, so it had to fulfill the purpose, right? And this is something we all eventually go through when it comes to, do I want to make art because I have a dream of being a good artist or just making art for myself, or do I want to go out, party, play video games, have sex, go do drugs, or get drunk? These are the choices. And I suppose I do play video games, and I was playing some Cyberpunk last night and some Call of Duty. And it was a fascinating conflict. Last night it was 12 o'clock. I was playing some Call of Duty, and I was completely sinking into my thoughts regarding drawing and doing more analysis of movers and torso and all this kind of stuff. And I sat there like 5 minutes, and I just observed myself as well as my ego just wanting different things, and me being basically in the middle, like being okay with either, right? I'm completely fine playing video games, but the way I was kind of internally triggered by making more art, by knowing if I do this, right, I get better, and I want to get better so I can do what I want to do and then get more better and stuff. So I sat down, stopped the video games, and sat down some more, started Photoshop, and was drawing for, I don't know, 3 hours. And it was 3 a.m. And then I was totally okay with playing some more Call of Duty. This is it is a weird kind of weird kind of thing to have. I don't know how to call this. I don't know how to call this. I hope it makes sense. Any questions? Is it still logical? Lynch, I have a bunch of educational videos like this in my highlight section already. So if you do miss this kind of talk, it is going to be in the other videos as well, in different kind of flavors and colors and variations. I wouldn't say performers, but there is a driving force. Any and all the great people, like the great people in history, the great people in science and artworks, any and all of the great people in music, and all of them, all of them, all of them, right? All underline in bold colors, all of them, all of them. What matters the most, right? It was basically not them being themselves, but them doing what basically made them. Right? It's just a weird way of putting it. But it's you live for the craft, you live for the science. And then we can very well imagine if people that did this wouldn't have done it, right? If Beethoven wouldn't have done the music, if Bach and Einstein and Edison and Tesla and all of these basically insane genius people, right? So the background, right? You can have your IQ, and the IQ wouldn't even matter because education is the point. And if you can't have it from the outside source and the school and the books, you have to get it yourself. And still, the key is the discipline. The, like it sounds so logical and redundant, right? The discipline to do what it takes. And I know how much I suck at this, at least to some degree, because my brain just, depression and things, and your brain chemistry gets completely mad. But still, discipline is a choice. And I call it conflict, right? When the one side of your brain is like, I want to play video games, I don't want to do this, I want to do something else, right? And there is a different part in your brain or in yourself that says, I have aspirations. I want to do things in life. I want to, be good or be the best at whatever you choose. And this again can be self. This can be ego. It can be completely narcissistic, you know. But still, there is the question of, what do we do with this existence and in life? And at least we shouldn't hurt people. So how do we find the happy and the fulfillment? And that too starts with contemplating what does it even mean? How do we find the happiness? And when it is art, and most of you guys are here for art, and some of you guys want to learn art, and some of you guys want to get really good, right? And there's a good, right? Like skill levels, right? And there is a pro skill level. There is a there's a yes amount of skill, and then there's something else. Then there's something completely else. That is a word. This is above the word. And this, like the state of being is completely hard to imagine because it is a rather flawless performance. I want this, right? It is the fish in water has this kind of mastery because it is beyond this kind of, the capabilities of itself basically being a swimming thing. It is normal, right? It is the complete thing. How do you call it? How do you call this? How do you call this? Like there has to be there is a I'm looking for a word that describes the state of being, or the state of mind. In psychology, we know about flow. How do you call this? Flow moments, um, flow experience. I don't know how are the words. They're escaping me. Um, this is fine when it comes to making money, right? This is definitely fine. And still, the more time you spend learning, practicing for your own desires, to fulfill yourself, to fulfill your ego, to express yourself, to be happy. I want this. I want this. Discipline, right? If there's ever anything that will keep us away from basically the graces of education, right? I can say it is a kind of border, but I believe it is a lack of discipline. It is the slap in the face, right? If somebody tells you you lack the discipline, it is not the sugar-coated pat on the back from your pals. It is rather the slap in the face. Any questions? Any questions? I would just extend this. So even though we have ideas of ourselves, our own capabilities, and usually we may not consider ourselves fast learners and that kind of stuff. So even though we basically think we are smart and intelligent, we may not be the smartest or most intelligent. And when it comes to learning, this is where the magic kind of begins, because the key word is the potential. And potential, basically, as long as your brain works, is infinite. The only real thing that would limit your own potential is you yourself, by believing you can't do a thing. And this is where things ultimately, through your belief, through what you believe to be reality, become etched in stone. And that, in a way, is the prison of our reality. Ah, da da da. Welcome to the Matrix. Anyway, that is how I see it. Like, if there was ever anything that held me back, or anything that pushed me forward, it was always from within. And having this idea of basically potential, it kind of keeps the doubts in check, because the mind itself, right? The mind itself has no idea what potential really is, like what it means, what it can do. And this is because, like, the brain is the magic, right? The brain offers us certain abilities, certain capabilities, including learning. And learning itself is like, it basically is unchecked, right? We can learn and understand so many things, including things that we thought of and we believed of as impossible to understand and learn. So if somebody would ask you, as a baby, mind that you can't speak as a baby, but if somebody were to ask you that you would be capable of basically building rockets that go into space, doing mathematics, building supercomputer AIs, and this kind of stuff, you would be like, nah, dude, nah, I'm out of here. Can't believe this. Because in your state, basically, as a baby, you have zero education, so you wouldn't understand this world, or basically your existence. Um, so how could you even know and judge the capabilities of the human mind, of your own brain, own consciousness, etc., including your own potential, basically? There's always, to extend this some more, the weird kind of fruit loops, the fruit loops of humans that are so smart, right? We call them prodigies and we call them geniuses, right? How does it even happen? How does it how does it happen that their brain and their mind basically skip the part that we call education? Just because like they have synapses and neural networks that basically go pew, 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 right? Where our networks go like zzz, 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 you know? This is like our learning process, right? So the genius mind and the genius brain, because unknown potential and reasons, just goes like, it lights this thing up, right? But still, when it comes to the learning, this is what I basically do every day, right? I draw my lines, I analyze my lines, I reinforce the process of basically doing this again, 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 understanding more and more and more and more of the concept. The comparison is so sad. I mean, I was. Do I have this? I watched a documentary about genius people, and they were basically not even teens, right? You had a genius level composer, right? Pianist, musician with the age of 9, right? You had a basically a girl being 12, and she had a vision from God, right? So she heard a voice in her brain, and so she told the story, right? She asked the voice, "Who are you?" And the voice said, "I'm God," right? And God said, "Go paint." And so she did. And when you look at what she paints, according to her age, is completely impossible. Like it's So what kind of fire in her brain basically lit it all up, so she so that she's able to paint like she is. And so you can basically argue that there is a point where you could be like, okay, she really had this vision, right? If it wasn't for this, she would be completely insane. Because usually if we talk to people that believe they have voices in their head and talk to God, they usually we don't meet them because they are put away, usually, right? And still, it's completely insane. And she's a very bright, intelligent young girl, and she is like the way she paints is like not for me, right? But she's capable for what she's doing. And when um like reflecting back on my own journey with my 10 years and stuff, you can't really. Who are you angry with? Your brain, or like yourself for not being smart? It's so weird, but it is a thing, right? So there's always smarter people. So the other guy is a chemist. He's also very young, like I don't know, 5, 7, 6, 9. Um, um, but he's like it's crazy. It's actually crazy to just not be able to understand this kind of stuff. I should link the documentary in Discord eventually, um, if anybody wants to see it. It's yes. I would say so. Yes. And there is a you can speculate. You can speculate. The key of what you call muscle memory are your neural networks. We have these neurons, right? And I know this from maybe 2 documentaries that I saw that I uh, saw about the subject. We have neurons in the brain, right? And we connect neurons with basically this is an A, and we connect the A with the sound A, right? So there is a sound, right? And we connect the sound to the image. So between these, excuse me. So these neurons would fire, right? The more the neurons fire and basically rehearse what an A is, among all the other words and letters of the alphabet that we have in existence, these neurons, they build the network. So when we basically communicate right now, our synapses and our neural network is completely on fire, right? It's basically they send out a signal, and the signal gets picked up, and you can look up weird animations of brain activity and how it looks, right, when the brain is active and how it happens. But this is basically the stepping stone. We connect everything, right? What an apple is. We connect the image of the apple with the word. We connect every letter in this constellation with the meaning of what the apple is. We understand apples have different colors, they have different sizes, they grow on different trees, on different locations around the world. So if you think about this right now, we have a neural network of million, billion, trillions of these weird looking things, and all of them are basically in a blaze. And this is what we call basically part of this is like consciousness, and we have awareness, right? Awareness is basically all the synapses um, that are on fire at any given moment that we can access. I know who I am, I know where I am, I know that I'm alive, I know that I'm not asleep, and all of this information is kind of stored, right? This is kind of how it would make sense, right? If I'm really smart and really intelligent and I have a really big brain, I have a crazy, crazy firestorm going on in my neural network just because I'm capable of accessing all these different things in the blink of an eye, just because my brain sends the signal that is accessing and cascading through all these different informations. And this is how I understand the brain of the genius, because it doesn't just light up single elements. It's like a wave, right? It's like a wave that cascades down into further regions of the brain, into basically information that is outside of the awareness, right? And it just goes there, it accesses it, or it builds connections that have not further been established, but still there has to be, some kind of guidance. Otherwise, the baby wouldn't, learn the language it hears or it reads. It could learn any language. It could make its own language. So still, when it comes to the speed of the brain of these neurons, again, potential, we have no idea how quick we can learn things, right? And this is again, for the normal pupil, for the normal student, for myself, I need maybe 500 studies. 500 drawings, 500 times of drawing one thing, analyzing, drawing it again, different positions, different sizes, colors, etc., to fully understand it. 500. Some people maybe need 5,000, some people maybe need 50,000. Other people maybe only need 50. And this is the potential. This is where we are. We don't know. We don't know if we are the guys that need 500 or if we are the guy that maybe only needs 5. But this is what we have to basically find out. And usually nobody wants to practice 50,000 times, but still we have to make the real effort, right? To figure things out. Because usually, like we can't really say how much intelligence we have until we feed enough education into our brain. And by education, it's basically feeding information to light up the synapses in the brain. I'm on layer 9740. That means I have more than 5, 6, 7, 9,000 layers of studies. It's a bit less. There's a lot of studies. That is a lot of studies. Look. I show. I had 4 layers of this. I had 4 layers of this. This is repetition. Like, as ugly as it looks, repetition is the cornerstone of mastery. Now, if you ask Beethoven how many times he practiced the things on his piano, if you ask Bruce Lee how often he practiced the kicks, and there is a quote about he being afraid, not the guy that practiced 100 kicks, but the guy that practiced one kick 1,000 times. I mean, I obviously save in documents that I store in these folders and stuff. I have more. This is document number 374. And I have a lot more documents. But it's a necessary step in basically whatever I attempt. The point being is I'm not trying to make one single artwork where I have one figure doing one pose and I paint it and I color it and I hang it on my wall. This is not the goal, right? So in variation, the body, anatomy, form, geometry has a underlying structure. That is logic, right? Any and all geometry can have top sides, left sides, right sides, bottom sides, top sides, front sides, etc. Like the box. The box has a top. So consequently, logically, the boob or a sphere would have a top. Now, in my practice, I would have to identify what is what and where does it begin, and then draw diagrams to identify which plane is basically which. So I have a front top, side top, front side top, and they all transition. Right? There's no real beginning and end of this kind of structure. And that is a very dynamic structure. Right? So since I'm not after understanding one thing to finish one artwork, I'm after understanding the process of creation and manipulation of form, so that I can draw all the boobs and all the sizes, all the bodies and all the sizes, and know how the volume basically extends into 3D space, and not just the 2D diagram, because that would be boring, right? That would be boring. So to really understand not just how to draw boobs or how to draw hands, but understand how to protrude basically into space to create a structure that can be random, fractal, generic, biological, anatomical, crystal, what's the word? Diamondish, through space, through XYZ. Right? That is the idea. Do it all by learning the one thing. It's all form anyway. Right? So form in itself has a underlying generic generated structure by XYZ planes, by axis. Right? We consider our space to be XYZ. Why is it not PQW, something else? Right? So it's somewhat arbitrary. But anyway, we have planes per axis. So we have planes per XYZ, and then we have planes per plane, basically. Top plane, side plane, left, right, front, top, bottom. Which again, if in diagram visualized, it also leaves you with a very random, not so much random, generic structure. So from this, right, this is like a very huge extension from basically drawing boxes and understanding the elements of the box, which is the line. With enough practice and understanding and doing things 500 times, you can fly. And why would I not want this? if it is in the potential of your or mine or anybody's capabilities. And again, all I really do is I take bits and pieces, which is again the line, and I rearrange them, which ultimately forms the illusion of space or form or geometry or distortion or anything else. I need to breathe more. Usually people practice more like this, and more people things like anatomy, right? They don't necessarily do this kind of stuff. And this is still me analyzing very carefully how lines and angles in certain placements form the form or the curvature or the perspective, and how it's all kind of like, the next question for me is basically, if I look at this, what would happen if I rotate this into space? Because the only thing that can happen is certain lines and certain angles would change. And then in my brain, I have to compute and calculate how the structure, how would I draw the structure so that I don't distort the volume, right? It's weird stuff. It's weird stuff. But this is the kind of science that builds, or that connects everything, because it is all form. It is all done with lines. If I can look at it, if I can see its physical body, I can overlay a geometric grid. It's the same thing we see in games, right? We see the 3D models, and basically we can do photogrammetry. We take pictures of stuff, right? Of rocks and cars and the magic of the PC and the binary stuff that do the thing, and it forms a three-dimensional object. And that means it has a kind of polygon structure. Yes. It's all the science. All the science. Any questions? What is my uptime? Definitely overextending. Do I still? Yeah, still. Any other questions? And I should grab some foodies. Some foods. 7-6. Any other questions or things? Yes, I think I want to get some foods. Food is good and relax the brain a little bit. Was a good madness. Some good microphone madness now. I hope it made sense and you guys learned some things. And I do hope it was logical for the most part. It made sense also for the most part, because sometimes it's very weird to explain form stuff in XYZ. This one's fine. This thing, this thing, this thing. Thank you guys for watching, lurking, hanging out, asking me the questions, being exposed to the madness of how to learn art in, not even art, how to learn how to not draw like a crazy person. How to prevent the infection of madness. This is something I should sell, like a miracle tonic, the miracle juice for how to remain sane when learning art. Yes. I should have a link. Just 1 second. Let's go there. So when you're in the stream, right, you click on the pools, you click on the name, and then you click on the video, and you click this one. Go to highlights. And then all the things, well, these you can watch, right? I need to do some more things. Where's one? This one is the first. Educational plus plus plus. All the videos, any and all videos with educational in the title. There's a lot. You gotta scroll. When you scroll down, you end up at least, see, 4 years ago. 4 years ago. There's still educational videos from 4 years ago, and they're all fine. See, there's more. Educational perspective and form. What is this? Rants. Okay, good rants. Science and form analysis. Learning, improving, drawing is a skill. More educational madness. Understanding. Watch this. Why is it 3 years old? Okay, definitely watch this. Education, understanding, perspective, magic. See, there's good stuff. Watch this. And I should put the links, copy pasta. There you go. Watch this. I have links. I have art book. Buy my art book. Art book good. Art book very good. There you go. Click the follow button if you like what you see. I will be back. I will do more studies, more madness. Probably not on mic tomorrow, but eventually the mic will resurface, as it does on occasion, right? Usually, as you can see, I'm studying in silence so that I can actually focus on the studies and the madness of the studies. But education is good. Sharing the knowledge is also mandatory for my brain. I wouldn't want to be the only one that gets geometrically crazy. So there you go. There you go. Thank you guys for watching, lurking, hanging out. I will play some ads. I press the links, buy my artwork, press the follow buttons, do the things. I will see you again. Bye. 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 Where's my emotes? Click. 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 Spam. Bye. 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 Bye.